Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 30 minutes of Torah study for the Torah portion of Vayeira. But we're going to begin tonight's class with last week's Torah portion. In last week's Torah portion, God makes a covenant with Abraham. The covenant is called the Covenant of the Parts. In this covenant, God says to Abraham, your children, your descendants are going to be slaves in a foreign nation for 400 years. But don't worry, they are going to emerge from that nation with riches, with wealth. It's this promise that stood by the Jewish people when they were slaves in Egypt. They knew they were promised by God that one day they will be redeemed, and not just redeemed, but they will go out with great wealth. Another part of the covenant of the parts, God promised Abraham that he will have a child, and that child will inherit him and ultimately pass on the message of monotheism and be the founder, the ancestor of the Jewish religion. However, decades pass, and still Abraham has no child. So Abraham marries Hagar, Sarah's maidservant. Together they have a child. The child's name is Yishmael. However, God informs Abraham, this is not the one. Yes, he's your child. Yes, he will have descendants. Yes, there will be an empire, but he is not the one who will inherit you. He's not the one who's going to carry on the tradition of Judaism. That is going to be through a child born to your wife, Sarah. This week's Parsha, we are told that Abraham and Sarah are traveling. Abraham says to Sarah, please do not tell people you are my wife. Dangerous for me. They'll get rid of me so they can get to you. Tell people that you are my sister. She does so and is immediately kidnapped. Avimelech, the king of the area, kidnaps Sarah. As soon as he kidnaps Sarah, before he can touch her, a plague breaks out. Not your traditional regular medical plague, but a divine plague. The orifices of the people in Avimelech's house, in the palace, stopped up. They got problems. They are ill. Avimelech recognizes, he realizes why the plague descended, because he took Sarah, who was a married woman, who was really the wife of Abraham. And Avimelech cries out to God, why did you do this to me? Why did you punish me? He says, first of all, I never touched her, so I'm innocent. Why are you punishing me? Second of all, I'm a really nice guy. If I would have known that she was married, I never would have taken her to me. And he says to Abraham, why did you do this? So Abraham responds, I'm sorry, Avimelech, but this is a dangerous neighborhood. This is an immoral place. This is an unethical environment. If I told people I was the husband, I would be dead. That is the reason why I had to tell people that Sarah was my sister. So Abraham prays to God that the plague which God placed upon the Avimelech and his palace should be removed. The prayers are answered. Everyone's orifices are opened. They are healed, including in that healing, women who were due to give birth but could not give birth due to this plague were able to give birth to wonderful, healthy, cute babies. The Torah then tells us, right after this incident, that Sarah conceives. Sarah becomes pregnant, and she gives birth to a child. She gives birth to Yitzchak. And this is the comment that Rashi makes. Rashi says, God remembered Sarah. This section was placed next to the preceding section to teach you that when people ask for mercy for their fellow, when they are in need of the same thing themselves, they are answered first. As it says, Abraham prayed, and immediately following it, God had remembered Sarah. That is, he had already remembered her before he healed Avimelech. So Rashi quotes this famous principle from the Talmud, that if you need something and someone else needs something, if you pray on behalf of that other person, God will listen to your prayer and he will grant you what you need. Now, the Rebbe comments based on this story that this is not such a simple case, because Abraham was already promised by God at the covenant of the parts that he will have a child with Sarah, and that child is going to inherit and be the future of Judaism. However, for decades, it does not come true. It's only after Abraham prays on behalf of Avimelech for the very same thing that this promise is fulfilled. And here are some of the Rebbe's comments. The Rebbe says this highlights the power of praying on behalf of others. God's promise was not fulfilled for many years after it had been given, but when Abraham prayed for Avimelech, Sarah was immediately remembered and blessed, and even before Avimelech was healed. It is clear that Avimelech was healed straight after Abraham's prayer, and Sarah was healed even before that. Moreover, even when a request for another person is for a completely new blessing, while one's own request is for something that has already been promised and is therefore easier to fulfill, we should ask for mercy for the other person first. We learn this from Abraham, who first prayed for Avimelech, even though asking for his own blessing would have been requesting something that had already been promised to him. So we learn something so powerful and so beautiful about how God operates and how we need to behave. Sometimes we want something for ourselves so desperately. What is the avenue to get it? Pray for someone else who has the same need. And as the Rebbe comments here, even if it's owed to you, Abraham was owed that child. Nevertheless, it was his prayer for Avimelech that opened the channel for that blessing ultimately to be fulfilled. And this is kind of counterintuitive, because you might think that there is a mitzvah in the Torah that you must pray to God for those things that you need. Your needs come before the needs of your friend and your fellow. Because the mitzvah is for you to pray for your needs. It's not a mitzvah to pray for someone else's needs. The mitzvah is to pray for your needs. So you might think, first I pray for my own needs. Then second I pray for my friend's needs. But that's not what it says. What it says, first you pray for your friend's needs, then for your own. Now, let's see what the Rebbe says, that this applies even if the need is exactly the same for you and your friend. When a person asks for mercy for his friend, and he is in need of the same matter, he's answered first. This underlies the great importance of love for our fellow Jew, that even when a person needs the same thing himself, he first prays for his fellow. So even when your friend and you have exactly the same need, the Torah is telling us, and we learned this from Abraham in this week's Parsha, pray for your friend first. Now, what if you have a similar need, but your need is more pressing, your need is more urgent, and maybe you could even argue that your need is more important? Should you pray for yourself, or should you pray for your friend? The Rebbe writes that Abraham's personal need was much greater than Avimelech's, because he was waiting for the birth of his heir Yitzchak, who would be the ancestor of the Jewish people. Nevertheless, Abraham first prayed for Avimelech. What was Abraham waiting for? Not just a child. Now, even though every single child is of infinite value, but Abraham was not just praying to God for child number 12. Abraham was praying to God not just for a child, but for the child that is going to be the one who is going to be one of the patriarchs, the founders of the Jewish people. Critical, vital, necessary. This has got to happen. It was so deep, that prayer that was there. Nevertheless, even in such an area, what do we learn? Pray for somebody else before you pray for yourself. But it's not just pray for someone else before your own, because we're trying to be altruistic. What did we see here very clearly? If you pray for someone else before you, that is the avenue for getting your answers first. That is the way that you get rewarded. But Avi, is this really the way to pray to God? Is this sincere? This is altruistic? Why am I praying for my friend? Not because I care so much for my friend, because I know that if I pray for my friend, then I'm going to get rewarded? The Rebbe says, yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter even though it's not the most altruistic. The Rebbe says even people who pray for their fellow with an ulterior motive are still answered first. They've still prayed for their fellow. Their fellow has benefited from their prayer, and for their fellow's needs, the motive makes no difference. Such an important principle. It doesn't matter how sincere, how heartfelt, how emotional, how concerned you were for your friend. At the end of the day, you prayed for your friend and your friend benefited from it. Therefore, you will get the reward. It's the same principle when it comes to giving tzedakah. While it's true, the ideal form of giving tzedakah is altruistic and anonymous and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, what matters most is the person or the organization that is in need gets the funds. You did the donation for your own ego, doesn't matter. Was the organization benefit? Did the people who needed it were benefited? If they did, yes, you will get the reward for the tzedakah. You daven for your friend. Why? Because you needed it. Your friend benefited. You are going to get the reward. We can see this idea play out in next week's Parsha in an absolutely fascinating way and in a beautiful way. In next week's Parsha, Abraham has one concern and one concern only, and that is to marry off his son Yitzchak. Yitzchak needs a shidduch. He's so concerned, he's so dedicated, he tells his servant Eliezer, everything I have, I'm giving to my son. Every penny, all of my money, my entire portfolio, I'm giving to my son in the hopes that he will find a good shidduch because he's got serious money in the bank. Eliezer travels to find the shidduch. He arrives at a well. Well is a common place for shidduchim to happen in the Torah. And he offers a prayer to God. He says, I got all these camels. The first person who comes over here, and I say, excuse me, I'm so thirsty, can I have a drink? And not only offers a drink for me, but offers to give a drink to all of my camels, I know this is going to be the type of person, the type of girl that's a good shidduch for Yitzchak. Before he finishes even to pray, Rivka appears, Rivka arrives, and she offers water for all of the camels, and you know this is a miracle from God sent. This is the girl for the shidduch. The story is so convincing and so powerful that when Eliezer goes to Rivka's parents and to Rivka's uncle, people who are crooks and criminals and unethical, immoral people, who have no interest in Rivka being associated with Abraham and with Yitzchak, they have to agree to it. Because they recognize this open miracle, the prayer of Eliezer answered immediately on the spot through Rivka. They send the Rivka back together with Eliezer to marry Yitzchak due to the great miracle that they witnessed. Rivka is on her way to Israel. And this is what it says in the Torah. Yitzchak was returning from Be'er Lachai Roi, for he dwelt in the south country. When Rivka was returning to Israel, what was Yitzchak doing? He was returning from a place that's called Be'er Lachai Roi. Rashi explains, what is Be'er Lachai Roi? He went to bring Hagar to his father so he could marry her. In last week's Parsha, Hagar ran away from Abraham. And she went to a place and she called it Be'er Lachai Roi. Where was Yitzchak at this time? He was busy trying to find a wife for his father. This is unbelievable. What was Abraham focused on at this time? Solely, completely to find a wife for his son Yitzchak, and he's going to give all his money. What's Yitzchak doing? Yitzchak is completely focused on finding a wife for his father. What do we learn from this story? In Vayeira, this week's Torah portion, we learn that if you pray for a friend, your prayer is going to be answered. What do we learn from next week's Parsha? From Abraham giving everything to find a wife for his son, and Yitzchak doing everything to find a wife for his father. If you act for a friend, not just pray, you do something for your friend, not only will it be answered, but a miracle is going to happen. In what merit that Eliezer experienced the miracle of Rivka? It's because Abraham was looking out for Yitzchak, and at that same time, Yitzchak was looking for a wife for Abraham. Not just praying for a friend, but doing something. Not only will the prayer be answered, but you are inviting miracles to your life. You invite miracles into your life when you act for a friend, when you do for a friend that's in need, even if you need the same thing. There was a Chabad Chassid in Israel. His name was David Morazov. He was a soldier in the IDF. He was killed in 1956 in the Suez Crisis. His wife's name was Shifra. She was devastated at this terrible, painful loss, the loss of her husband. And she wrote to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe instructed her that what she must do is volunteer to help and support other widows and orphans in the IDF. Women just like her who lost their husbands. Women just like her who had to raise their kids as single mothers. Help them, support them, devote yourself to this. And she did. Wholeheartedly. She invested the rest of her life in helping and supporting widows and orphans of people killed in the IDF. She would update the Rebbe regularly. The Rebbe was heavily involved, and the Rebbe supported, and the Rebbe funded, and the Rebbe paid for many of her activities in order to do so. Now we're going to read an excerpt from a letter that the Rebbe wrote to her in regards to her activities. The Rebbe writes that you are fortunate to have merited to successfully raise the spirits of so many Jewish women in their unique circumstances of having lost their husbands. Our sages say that one who prays for their fellow is answered first. So God will certainly raise and strengthen your spirits. The Rebbe says to her, yes, you have challenges in your life. Your husband was killed. You are at a disadvantage. But because of the fact you are acting, you are doing for others who have the same challenges and the same problems that you have, absolutely, God will not only answer your prayers, but God is going to bring miracles into your life. Pray for someone who has the same problem as you, your prayer will be answered. Do something for someone who has the same problem as you. Now we're talking opening miracles into your life. There's a very powerful lesson from this, and that in life, we experience challenges, and we worry about those challenges, and it can feel a little bit depressing sometimes. How do we break out of the funk that we're in, but not just break out of the funk? How do we bring into our life a solution to the problem, to the crisis, to the challenges that we have? What we learn from the Parsha, the Rebbe explains so beautifully, pray for others who have the same problem. But not just pray for others, do for others, help for others, act for others who have the same problem as you. And you will see not only will your prayers be answered, right? Not only will you be schlepped out of the funk that you're in because you're helping others, but you could be opening channels for absolute open miracles in your life. Now, in a second, I'm going to show a video of a woman sharing a story from the Rebbe with this exact advice and how it comes to fruition. But before that, I just want to let everyone, next week there will not be a class on Thursday nights because I will be in New York for the International Conference of Shluchim. So the Kinnis HaShluchim is next week. I also want to remind everyone that this Shabbos is the 13th anniversary of the shul being in this current location, the current building. It's the bar mitzvah of the shul. We have a beautiful sponsored kiddush catered by Zelda's in Chicago. It's sponsored by the Elliott, Kimmel, and Smulian family. We're having a great crowd in shul. It's going to be a great celebration and a party. I hope everyone can come. And it's a good opportunity to bring a friend, a neighbor, to show them what it means to be part of the shul community. And I want to remind everyone who was at the JLI class on Wednesday that we will not be having the JLI class this week on Wednesday because Chava and I have to go to New York for her scans. They're bumping them up by a few weeks. She hasn't been feeling so well. It's not an emergency, but they just want to be sure. Precaution, let's just get the scans now a few weeks earlier just to rule anything out. So the scan is on Wednesday, so we have no class Wednesday. So we're doing the JLI class on Monday night. It is at the same time of Rosh Chodesh Society. We'll figure it out in the building. So next week's JLI class is going to be on Monday. Okay, let's get the... All right, now I got to figure out how to get the controls back so I could share the other video that I want to share. All right, let's see. Here we go. Okay. Now I will share the video that I want to play here. Share sound. All right. So this video, as you're going to see, takes place with Mrs. Fogelman. I know the Fogelman family very well because I went to high school in Worcester, Massachusetts for 2 years. 9th and 10th grade, I was in high school in Worcester, the Fogelman's yeshiva, and the Fogelmans were my grandparents' oldest friends, both shluchim in Massachusetts for probably 70 years. So enjoy this clip. Last week, it did the same thing. I may have to just refresh the page. Hold on just a second. I'll refresh the page, and it will play. All right. The page is not wanting to refresh. We're dealing with some juicy technical difficulties, but please bear with me for a moment, and God willing, it will refresh. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay.
Rachel Fogelman and her husband, Rabbi Herschel Fogelman of Blessed...
Start it again.
Rachel Fogelman and her husband, Rabbi Herschel Fogelman of blessed memory, have been Chabad emissaries in Worcester, Massachusetts since 1947. In the early 1950s, she brought a group of girls from Junior Hadassah to an audience with the Rebbe.
One of the mothers of the girls decided to come with her. She too wanted to see the Rebbe. She came, and during an intermission, after the Rebbe spoke and addressed all these young people, and there was not only my group, but other groups were there, Mrs. Greenberg went in for Yechidus to the Rebbe, and she asked for a bracha, and she was there quite a while. Soon, she came out of the office, the Rebbe's office, and Rabbi Chodakov approached me, and he said, please, he said, the Rebbe wants to see you. Go in and see the Rebbe. I was taken aback, thinking, what could it be? The Rebbe was in his room, in the room, and the Rebbe was smiling broadly. And the Rebbe looked at me and he said, Mrs. Greenberg is gekommen, als ich soll ihr geben a bracha, als ihr Tochter soll Chasana haben. A bracha für a Shidduch. Ich habe gegeben a bracha für a Shidduch, aber sie glaubt mir nicht. And he laughed. And he laughed. And then he says to me, Zed du sollst tun a Shidduch für ihr Tochter, wird dein Schwester tun a Shidduch. At that time, I kept bothering the Rebbe and asking for a bracha for my sister, who was so choosy that it looked like there was no chassan in this world that would have met with, her qualifications. And I kept asking for a bracha for her. The Rebbe told me this, and I looked very puzzled, and I think I asked the Rebbe, but either via Zoi or what could I do, or von Wannen, I don't remember. I just remember being very puzzled, and the Rebbe smiled and said, Efsher von die Städtlach Arum, perhaps in one of the towns that are nearby or around Worcester, you'll find a shidduch for her tachter. I didn't know anyone in the towns near Worcester. They were all really goyish towns with a few Jews sprinkled here and there. I came to the yeshiva in the morning, early in the morning. We traveled all night. And I looked around and I noticed, even though I knew he was there, I all of a sudden realized he was there. I hadn't really realized Rabbi Weinberger, a young man who was teaching one of the classes. My husband had hired him to teach, and he was a rabbi in a little town, Clinton, Mass, near Worcester. And I looked at him and I thought, the Rebbe said, look at the towns nearby. There he is, Clinton. He teaches in Clinton, and he's a rabbi in Clinton. He's teaching the yeshiva. I couldn't wait for recess because I had to speak to him. And as soon as recess came, I was waiting in the yard. Out came Rabbi Weinberger, and I ran over to him and I said, Rabbi Weinberger, have I got a girl for you? And I spoke about her and raved about her, and you must call her and you must go out with her. It's a good shidduch for you. Well, he believed me. He took her name and her number. He called her that night, and they started to go out, and they liked each other, and their dating was very successful until finally, by Yutes Kislev, they were chassan and kala. They became engaged, and they came to the Rebbe for Yutes Kislev because they were so excited. I kept telling I told him and I told her, the reason I introduced you is because the Rebbe told me to look for someone in a town near Worcester. And they were very overwhelmed, impressed, and happy. They were gliklach. And I went to the Rebbe after that at the next Yechidus, and I said, the Rebbe promised that my sister will do a shidduch if I will do a shidduch for Estelle Greenberg. And the Rebbe smiled, and he said, yes, she'll do a shidduch. And not long after that, she met her husband, who would be her husband. She had met him a year previously, and for some reason they didn't go out. They didn't feel she didn't feel it was suitable for her, or whatever it was. But now it was a different approach, and they got engaged not long after that.
Second, right. So that was a beautiful story. Hold on a second. All right. So beautiful story. Here we have a situation. Exactly what we talked about before, that you pray for someone, you do for someone, and that opens the channels for blessings and miracles in your life. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's 30 minutes of Torah studies class. Again, no class next week, but God willing, an amazing Shabbos and a Monday night jail. And Sunday morning, we got Talmud class with breakfast, and I got locks this week, right? Mitchell, mandatory attendance. We have locks this week. Have a good Shabbos, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome.
Travis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shabbos.